Thank you. I've got Councillor Hodgson next,
Thank you, Chairman.
and then Councillor Thomas, and then Councillor Brazil.
I absolutely support this amendment because I think I'm very aware of Sustainable South Hams as a network of all the various groups that are operating in the South Hams and have generally gathered up and brought momentum forward for the groups. They've got a map, they've got a website, they're doing fantastic work, and anybody that has activities going on in their parish can actually just join in the network and be supported in all sorts of different ways, including very useful information and meetings, etc. And so I hear what Councillor Spurden said, and I think maybe what might be needed here is a slight amendment to this amendment, if I may.
No,
And what I was going,
unfortunately.
if I may, I would like to propose that we have the amendment as it stands, but I would add that we support this in principle, subject to an acceptable business plan being sent in. The reason I say that is because I think it means that we would actually then put them on a slightly different footing. I've just looked at the minute from that December executive, and it talks about projects. This isn't really a project. A network is a group of people who are actually working together to support the projects. And I think it's actually a very useful layer below us and that works across the South Hams to really do good works. So I may, if I propose then that.
Yeah, you unfortunately you can't propose within the rules. You can't propose an amendment. I think that's correct, Mr. Fairbairn.
Chairman, that's correct. You can't propose an amendment to an amendment, and as it's an amendment to the budget, it would have had to have been given an advance notice. So I'm afraid you can't do that.
So, but can the proposer of the amendment itself accept a slight change or not?
No.
No, it's just to say accepting it in principle.
We
business
can't do what we can't do. That's the rules. Unfortunately.
To have ruled ourselves out of sensible debate.
Well,
sorry, can I ask a question?
I don't think there's anybody in this room that's not sympathetic to the cause. It's the manner of.
I didn't mean that at you. I was just saying about the rules the rule that we've accepted seems to be curtailing us badly at the moment. Anyway.
Well, that's it. Councillor Thomas.
I'm happy for Councillor Brazil to take first.
Councillor Brazil to take first.
Yeah, thank you. First of all, I hear what Drew said about the new fund, and that's excellent. But they're not mutually exclusive. You can do both. So I know it wasn't a shock to see that come in and to try and sort of knock this off its balance. But I think that members who have engaged with Sustainable South Hams realise what a fantastic organisation and what great works it does. And it's a bit of a chicken and egg here, because the problem they've got is it's all run by volunteers. It doesn't cost the taxpayer a penny to do the works that they do. And what if they've got to produce some kind of business plan and all those things and projections and everything, that all takes time. And the truth of the matter is they are about to disappear because they don't have that time. So if we suddenly say to them, you've got to do put up all these hurdles that you've got to jump over in order to get the money, then I'm afraid that they won't do it and they won't get the monies. I think that we should, and I would encourage other members to try and engage with them, because they are fantastic. I've been on superb field trips to community composting sites, to Proper Job up in Chagford. I've been to the waste to energy plant down in Plymouth. I mean, all quite, really what this council could and probably should be doing, but probably doesn't have the capacity to do it. But here we've got an organisation that does do it, and let's give them a go with this money. And if it all goes horribly wrong and they don't do anything and it's a complete failure, then say no. But what we could do is say, here's the money, and if you want this kind of support, then you've got to come up with all those hurdles that we've talked about, the business plans and the things like that in the future. because I genuinely think that this would be a massive missed opportunity of this council to help to progress its climate change and biodiversity emergency. And it's ironic, isn't it? Is we're quite happy to outsource our rubbish collection to a company that can't do the rubbish collection. But we're worrying about this is the sort of way we're outsourcing our emergency and biodiversity emergency. We're outsourcing it to a small group of volunteers, I should add. And I think that this is a fantastic opportunity for South Hams to use that energy and enthusiasm of these volunteers to progress what we all want. Because I think, I agree, we all do want it. Anyway, so I very much hope that you might feel it in yourselves to be able to support this amendment. And I'd like to congratulate John on bringing it forward, because I know that he's been rattling the cage and lobbying it for some time. Thank you.
Right. Do you wish to come in now, Councillor Thomas?
Thank you, Chairman. Members, Sustainable South Hams is pretty unique as an organisation. It's a democratic collaboration, okay? It works between parish councils and community groups. It's supported groups from the west of the district in Wembury, right the way through to the east in Kingswear, from the north in Staverton to the south in Marlborough. It's got good coverage of this district. These are volunteers who are working with parish councils, with environmental community groups. What they are doing is they are acting as the conduit. Very often, motions are proposed at this council and members quite rightly say we shouldn't be doing this because it takes up too much officer time, which is not fair on our hard-working staff. And that is often a very fair and reasonable argument. This, happily, is the very opposite. What we're saying here is that by supporting this group, who are already proving across the wards that they can help real people make real differences, be that through pledges for nature, be that through coming to the talks that they bring on things like treescapes or Recycle Devon or the Verges, important matters that people in their communities across our district will actually be able to help with. They'll be helping our officers to meet our targets. They'll be helping us as councillors to see a better, greener district for our children and our grandchildren. This is an organisation who are choosing to do this because it matters to them. They are coming to us and saying, please spend some of the money that you have quite rightly set aside as a district for the climate emergency. Please give us a very small proportion of that amount so that we can help your community groups. They haven't come down as far as Woolwell yet. They would love to come to Woolwell. If Woolwell have a community environmental group that want their support, I promise you, it says on the very first page of their website, if you'd like help setting up a group in your parish, we're very happy to share what we've done or even give a presentation setting out how we developed our group with lessons learned. They would love to come to Woolwell. They would love to come to Stokenham. They would love to go to Holme, I'm sure. And the other places in the district they haven't got to yet. They haven't got there yet because they haven't had the financial support that this council is well able to give them today. Members, I heartily commend this amendment. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Thomas. Councillor Rowe.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I've listened to what our friends on the opposite side to us are saying, and whilst I do agree with all the good work that's being done, but this is a group of people who have got together working voluntary. If they want us asking for £22,500 out of the fund, they must have a bank account to start off with. So they need to be set up as a business. They need to present us with a business plan of how they're going to spend this £22,500, because if we can give X, Y, Z sums of money, but how do we know how they propose to spend it? That would be my worry. And whilst they are obviously doing a lot of good work, I have been in touch with them, but also it's down to each and every one of us, not only us as councillors, but every resident of South Hams to do their bit towards the climate emergency changes, etc., etc. And you know how we can all do that by turning off the lights, not leaving the tap running when we are cleaning our teeth, riding our bikes and walking instead of jumping in the car. I might even come by boat up to a council meeting, who knows? But we can all do plenty of things for ourselves as well. And whilst I agree with it in principle, but this is not the right way to go about just dishing out £22,500. Sorry, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Rowe. Councillor Holloway and then Councillor Kemp.
Thank you, Chairman. They are doing a good job. And they've had lots of events. I was a little bit perturbed that I had to actually get them to invite me to any in events, considering the portfolio that I have. But now I do attend any that I'm able to get to. A couple of things online anyway, which have been pretty good. I may not get anywhere physically for a day or two, but yeah, they do a good job. But you know as well as I do, and so does Councillor Brazil, that if I had a favourite group and I put forward for 20 odd grand for them, they'd be down on me like a ton of bricks, quite rightly. And I think that everybody should go through the same mill. We didn't perhaps get it up right to start with crowdfunding. We're trying to put it right, and we will get it right. And hopefully we'll get some money to Sustainable South Hams. But I really do not want anyone to suggest that we don't support it. We don't want to support it. We do. But really, we must treat them all the same. There's several groups out there doing some fantastic work in support of what we're trying to do as a council. Thank you.
Councillor Holway. Councillor Kemp.
I just wanted to add something to what Dan Thomas said about Sustainable South Hams. It's not just about climate change or biodiversity. They're actually incredibly supportive when it comes to advice about energy and tariffs and all that kind of stuff as well. And actually, they've been more help to me in the last 2 weeks than any of the other organisations, CAB, any of it, benefits, all of that sort of thing. These people have actually just crossed so many T's and dotted so many I's, and everything is a lot clearer. Why aren't our own services offering that kind of support to local people? And actually, Tom, I'm sorry to bring this up, but I mentioned to you about community composting yonks ago, and you looked at me and you said, I don't think there's much call for that, do you? You did say that. You looked over your glasses. It was terribly patronising. I've been banging on about community composting for months and months and months and months and months, along with people that have actually initiated these projects. What's he called? Smurden, Mr. Smurden. Sorry, I was trying to remember your name, Councillor Smurden. You have a community composting group down at South Brent that is supported by this authority. I want to see those in every parish. Well, you told me it was a load of old cobblers. I'm not, Tom.
I don't think we need to go into what the private conversation was between you. We will. Councillor Kemp, have you finished?
Yeah, I just would really like this council to support Sustainable South Hams.
Okay.
They do an awful lot more than you lot.
Councillor Callaghan.
Thank you. Yeah, I would like to support this amendment. I know firsthand about the work that Sustainable South Hams does, and I think they're an excellent organisation. They thread throughout the district. We've declared a climate change emergency, and this is the sort of thing what we should be focusing on, and not arguing about, whether or how we should support them, because I understand it, as Councillor McKay is saying, their work is under threat if they're not financially supported. So where's the argument here? I mean, for example, it's not just us saying it. It's I spoke to the chairman of Kingsbridge in Bloom, for example, a gold medal award-winning organisation that does amazing work in our award-winning district council-owned park in one of our 4 main towns. And he said, I believe Sustainable South Hams is so important to help us move forward with our sustainability in Kingsbridge, and an excellent vehicle to be able to share best practice with other towns. Now that really is what we want. We don't want to. One of the main problems is working in isolation, and joined up thinking is extremely important. But when it's very difficult to achieve, and often unacknowledged, because when it works seamlessly, it's not necessarily noticed. But when it isn't there, it's noticed a lot. So I must say that, you know, really this is very important, this amendment, and I'd like to support it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hawkins.
I find Councillor Kemp's comment, "you lot," quite offensive, and I'm sure you didn't mean it, but I do find that offensive. I'm sorry to have to comment now, and I apologise. I don't think you meant it, but "you lot" is an offensive comment. I do all I possibly can to represent my sustainability groups in my patch. Climate change and sustainability is a vital issue of this council. We have spent a considerable amount of money, or put considerable amount of money into our budget. I think it was £600,000 last year towards this. We have already been voted the 13th best district council in the country for our climate change programme to date. And I think it's up to all of us as councillors to do all we can to support our sustainability groups. I certainly do that in my patch and also my county patch. And I do think they have to go through the right process of putting a business case in, just like every other group that we as a council would support. And I'm sure that this council will support Sustainability South Hams in the future.
Thank you. It does sound like everybody wants to support this project, to support Sustainable South Hams. As we're not allowed to make an amendment to the amendment, can we support the amendment with a list of caveats? Why? Well, or standings. Or understandings. I don't understand why we can't support with understandings. I have to say, you know, I personally don't know a massive amount about Sustainable South Hams, so I will put my hands up. But, you know, clearly through the debate, they are supporting and wish to support further and further. I can't see why we're not kind of pulling out all of the stops to ensure that this work, which, you know, is actually sounds like it's going to save us quite a lot of money in the long term. Why is it that we can't support it without some caveats or understandings? Why is that so completely out of the question? After debating it for such a long time and acknowledging that everybody wants to support it in some way, I don't understand why we can't do that. It's a question. Can that question not be answered?
I just want a point of clarification. That it keeps on being said that they need to submit documentation and go through due process, etc., etc. They have submitted acres of documentation to officers. This is not just an amendment that's come out of the blue. This has been an ongoing issue for a long time, and the documentation is there and already submitted.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. This is really a question for Mr. Powell, because Mr. Powell obviously is the officer, I think, with oversight of, you know, the partnership funding and grants, and you know, we gave this a lot of thought and a lot of. I mean, to be perfectly honest, the organisations that we were supporting were grilled. There's no other way to explain it. And is there any reason why Sustainable South Hams cannot apply to us for partnership funding in the same way as those other organisations? I mean, Councillor McKay says that financial details have been supplied. I mean, have you seen them? Who's seen them? Who's looked through them? There's a principle here. And I mean, I've got absolutely, you know, I'm sure they're a great organisation. Thank you. Right.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Snowden. Yeah, I'm certainly
we've received documentation which was received as part of the discussions that took place with the Task and Finish group last year. So a funding proposal, it's a funding proposal that was brought forward not generally in line with the requirements of our criteria now, but in principle, I wouldn't think there would be much work needed to be done to amend that business case that's been put forward. We'd need a little bit more detail, a little bit more focus on the outcomes, rather than just a funding request, which is what we've got at the moment. So there's no reason why we couldn't receive something from Sustainable South Hams shortly. The window of opportunity is open, and we can consider that quickly and make a decision, which I think, as agreed at executive, would then go round to the full membership to look at that decision that's been made.
Thank you. And I'm going to ask a question. Are you talking weeks or are you talking months, to be honest?
Certainly not talking months, Chairman. We've said the expression of interest window is open until the 7th of March. We can look at it quickly and turn it around quickly if that's the will of the membership.
Thank you for that. That's very helpful. Councillor Rowe.
Thank you, Chairman. Well, I think we're going round in circles here.
Not on this, she
I'm
hasn't.
going to move that can the
Sorry,
the
you
amendment
have
please
already
be put.
spoken. I was looking
Yes,
at I've got
I
that
have
many
already
names on my list. No, we have every right, everybody has a right to speak once. I've let Councillor Smyrna ask a question just now, as I did Councillor McKay, which is fine. Is there anybody who hasn't spoken on this who wishes to speak? Other than that, I will go back to the leader, Councillor Pearce. Right. Councillor Pearce, would you like to finish?
Thank you, yes. Well, I think we all have a good deal of sympathy for Sustainable South Hams, and I think Councillor Thomas put it the best. You really set out very well what they do. But I think the debate here is about the process. It's about the process. It's not about the organisation. If the request came in properly, then they would get the money. Now, the problem with the last fund was that it wasn't able to give that much money. We now have a fund that is. We've got the basic funding request, which remains there from last time. So there's not an awful lot they're going to have to do to submit a bit more information. And it seems like everybody's keen to support them. So I don't know what all this debate has been about. If people could just see the wood for the trees, Mr. Powell spoke before we started, and we didn't need all this debate. We really didn't. But I cannot support this amendment because it is not approaching it in the right way. We do not dish out amounts of money in the budget process to organisations. There are ways of going about it, and you have to go about it in the right way. So there's the answer to the question. If you go about it in the right way, you'll get the money. If you put in a request via a motion or asking the budget for it, you're unlikely to get it.
Thank you. Right, so recorded vote. Mr. Powell, please.
Mr. Powell.
No. Mr. White. Already surprised, isn't it? Yeah. Well, if we were doing D&M, it would be Officer White, you see, but because in the year I get told officer, so yeah.
Thank you, members. So voting on the amendment as per the screens there.
That's for the that's for the purple line.
Okay, so we're voting for amendment number 2. Members in alphabetical order: Councillor Abbott.
For.
Councillor Austin.
Against.
Councillor Baldry.
For.
Councillor Bastone.
Against.
Councillor Birch.
For.
Councillor Brazil.
For.
Councillor Brown.
Against.
Councillor Chown.
Against.
Councillor Foss.
Against.
Councillor Hawkins.
Against.
Councillor Hodgson.
Right.
Councillor Holway.
Against.
Councillor Hopwood.
Against.
Councillor Jackson.
For.
Councillor Jones.
Against.
Councillor Kemp.
For.
Councillor McKay. Councillor Callaghan.
For.
Councillor Pannell.
For.
Councillor Pearce.
Against.
Councillor Pringle.
Against.
Councillor Reeve.
Against.
Councillor Rowe.
Against.
Councillor Smurden.
Against.
Councillor Spencer? Councillor Sweet? Councillor Taylor? And Councillor Thomas? Thank you, members. That is therefore 12 votes in favour with 16 against, and that amendment is declared lost. Thank you, members.
Thank you, Mr. White. We just confirm that we now go to the substantive motion, and that's not changed in any way from what's on the printed.
That's correct. Thank you, Chair.
Right, thank you. So, anybody wishes to debate the substantive motion? Councillor Birch.
Can we speak to the substantive motion?
Yes.
Well, I'll welcome the opportunity to say what I wanted to say a short while back. Touche. Can I just put Councillor Hawkins made a false allegation that the Lib Dems had proposed council tax increases. That is not correct. To the best of my knowledge, we've not, in the time that I've served on this council. And I think the fact is that the Conservative administration has been here since about 1999 or thereabouts. And I believe every year the council tax has gone up. So pot calling kettle black comes to mind. So I'll just make the point I was going to say, and it is why I shall be voting against the budget proposals, is that it is quite clear to me from the debate today that the administration of this council has effectively given notice to the council taxpayers of its intention to increase council tax by £2 million over the next 10 years. And I think that that is just not the approach. And therefore, I think rather than make a commitment to increase council tax by £2 million over the next 10 years, it's, in my view, it is better that we help our residents rather than make such commitments. So I shall be voting against the budget proposals.
Yes, Councillor Poultry.
I've just heard in my left ear a member down on the others to my left accusing Councillor Birch of telling lies. I do not think that is proper behaviour, and I would ask for it to be withdrawn.
I admit I did not hear that comment, but if
leave it there. But just can we stress we do these things in a decent and proper manner? It's in the protocol, and can members anywhere in this chamber stop saying accusationary points like that?
I fully agree, and I only said to our chief executive not long ago, the day it gets anywhere near another place behaviour, I shall be using that hammer very firmly. Anybody else wish to speak on the main substantive motion? Councillor Smerdon.
Thank you, Chairman. In a slightly lighter aside, I was not surprised to hear that to Councillor Birch reach for the Constitution at a fairly rapid opportunity. Having been served as Vice Chair of Overview and Scrutiny for several years with Councillor Birch, I know that he is well versed, and I think that he must take the Constitution to bed with him, because he is very, very well versed in the Constitution. However, I think the issue, this issue of 2 million, and there's a lot of, there are figures kicking around. As I understand the situation, if we don't increase the council tax by this sum which we're talking about today, over, I think, Mrs. Buckle, I hope, will confirm this, but I think the council, over the course of 10 years, then the council would miss out on £1 million. And £1 million of spending power, I don't fully understand it. It works like compound interest in reverse. But I think perhaps Mrs. Buckle could confirm that this is that's the process which we're talking about.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, it is, as the leader explained, the cumulative impact over a 10-year period of the loss of that £5 within the base budget, within the council tax base, would be £2 million over the next 10 years. It is 200,000 per annum. Thank you.
Councillor Brazil.
Yeah, I think that the point that John was trying to make, and it's a very relevant one and very pertinent, is that what we heard from the arguments from the Conservative colleagues was that they intend to increase council tax year on year on year. Well, Councillor Bastone's shaking his head, but that's not what you said. What you said is that if we do this, and it's quite right, I agree, it's 10 million over 2 years, but what happens when you put it up next year? If you 2 million over 10 years, but if you keep putting up council tax, we're talking about in the region of over 10 million over 10. That's what you are looking to take out of the pockets of the hard-pressed council taxpayers of the South Hams, and you're quite happy to sit here and say that's fine because we're delivering the services. Well, some of them argue you're not delivering the services. You know, I still find it extraordinary that as Conservatives you seem to think that putting up taxes is the only way to increase the productivity and revenue within the South Hams. And that's why I shouted shame, because if you call yourselves Conservatives, you should be looking at innovative and entrepreneurial ways of this council to generate funds in order to pay for the services that we do or don't deliver.
Thank you, Councillor Brazil. Councillor Hopwood, and then...
Thank you. We're listening to a lot about £10 million over 10 years now. We seem to be hooked on that. £10 million over 10 years at £5 a year would be £50 over at the end of year 10, which would give us £10 million. So actually, for 50 quid for £10 million, that isn't a bad deal.
Councillor Alston.
Is that it? Is it on?
That's on.
That's on. Right, okay. I'm heartened by this new Liberal Democrat look. What I was saying there is this newfound change to low taxation that I'm currently hearing from the Liberal Democrats. I've spent many, many years listening to the Liberal Democrats tell us they want to put an extra penny, I think the way they phrased it was an extra penny on income tax was the way they used to put it, for year upon year upon year. And earlier on, Councillor Brazil sort of said, come and join us, as indeed you have said, yeah. So I'm glad we've seen a change of heart on behalf of the Liberal Democrats. I sincerely am. I hope you truly stick to this change of heart. But what I'd like to do is extend a warm welcome to the Tory party as well, because there's plenty of people like myself in the Tory party who have spent many years campaigning for low tax. I've spent many years campaigning for low tax and small state. I thought Councillor McCain also got some rather hard stick for a referendum earlier on as well. I like referendums, Councillor McCain. I like the last one we had. I thought it was fantastic. I thought the outcome... I'm all for referendums, and all I can really say is, based on the idea that you're a low-tax, referendum-based party, there are plenty of people who support that in the Conservatives, and there'd be a very warm welcome if you'd like to come and join us.
Okay. Councillor Hopwood, I was going to just finish off then with another light-hearted development, but yes, Councillor Hopwood.
I just thought, since we're all making political statements, I would make sure it's clear that I'm not a member of the Liberal Democrats. I'm actually a Green Party person, in fact the leader of the Greens on this council, and I would also say that normally we would be supporting increases, as I said earlier, but on this occasion I think we owe it to our residents to not put the council tax up. Thank you. But if anybody wants to join the Greens, you'll need to check your credentials.
I think independent's the way forward.
Any further speech? Well, I got to, anybody else wishes to speak? Well, I'll chuck a pebble in the pond next year. We may be in a better position and we may not have to put up tax. We don't know. We don't know.
It's all on tape.
Pierce, I think we can round this up.
Thank you, everybody. This has been an interesting debate, and I think Councillor Austin has put his finger on the on something quite interesting. However, just to emphasise what he said, I'd like to talk to you about Teambridge's figures, because Teambridge, I believe, is a Liberal Democrat administration, and it's oft quoted by Councillor Birch in particular. Now, Teambridge's this year has had to make a 16.1% saving as a percentage of their net expenditure, their net revenue expenditure, which amounts to £2.6 million. Their budget is slightly larger than ours. Ours is around about 10.5 million a year, and theirs is something just over 16 million. But they've had to make a 16.1% reduction in order to balance next year's budget. We've had to make a 3.9% reduction of £444,000. So, sorry, their projected budget gap next year is £3.3 million, where ours is £444,000, not million. So this is just to say that we are a prudently run council, and we and West Devon have the lowest figures, both of savings we've had to make and projected budget gaps in the whole of Devon. But Teambridge, Liberal Democrat, and Exeter, Labour, are the worst. So therefore, take from that what you like, but I recommend this budget to you as a prudent way of maintaining our finances and being able to help everybody who needs help in the South Hams.
Here, here.
Thank you for that. And now, Mr. White, and I'll get your name right this time. Recorded vote, please, on the substantive motion.
Thank you very much, Chair. So the substantive motion has 12 parts to it, as per the report recommendations 1 to 12. Councillor Abbott.
Against.
Councillor Austin.
For.
Councillor Baldry.
Against.
Councillor Bastone.
For.
Councillor Birch.
Against.
Councillor Brazil.
Against.
Councillor Brown.
For.
Councillor Chown.
For.
Councillor Foss.
For.
Councillor Hawkins.
For.
Councillor Hodgson. Councillor Holway.
For.
Councillor Hopwood.
For.
Councillor Jackson.
Against.
Councillor Jones.
For.
Councillor Kemp.
Against.
Councillor McKay. Councillor Callaghan.
Against.
Councillor Pannell.
Against.
Councillor Pearce.
For.
Councillor Pringle.
For.
Councillor Reeve.
For.
Councillor Rowe.
For.
Councillor Smurden.
For.
Councillor Spencer.
For.
Councillor Sweet.
Against.
Councillor Taylor.
For.
And Councillor Thomas.
Against.
Thank you, members. That is therefore 16 votes in favour with 12 against, and substantive motion is therefore declared carried. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wright. Thank you very much. We'll adjourn for lunch now. Do you want a full hour and come back at 2:15, or can you manage it and come at 2 o'clock?
2 o'clock.
2 o'clock.
Right, thank you. We will resume at 2 o'clock.